Good morning, cubies and newbies. I am Sunshine, and today is Friday. I am the creator of the ABCube method for solving Rubik's Cubes. It's the newest method that I know of. I published it in 2020, and instead of going for speed or instead of going for the fastest or the shortest number of moves, I broke it down into what is easiest to learn. What is easiest for me to teach. It takes every other method that I've seen is geared towards the 3x3 because hey, that's the original. Then so you learn the 3x3, and then when the 4x4 came along, instead of learning the 4x4, we learned how to make it look like a 3x3 and then solve it like a 3x3. Well, that just seems to me. And then when the 5 came along, okay, here's these more algorithms to learn, and then you can do the 5x5 as well. And from there, the bigger ones. So we'll just treat it like a 3x3, treat it like a 2x2, treat it like a 4x4, treat it like, and breaking down. That's called the reductionist method. There's lots of ways to do that. Lots of methods out there that do that, but that always seemed to me to be a double solve. Why not just solve it a new way? But because we were taught to see it as the 3x3, that kind of influenced our perception on the larger cubes. And so I focused mine from an all cube standard. Like, okay, what do all of the cubes have in common, and can we treat them the same, or do we have to learn more algorithms? And so you can read my bio if you want more of the story, but this method, like I said, A is just 4 moves. I didn't say, but A is 4 moves, B is 8 moves, and then the A is used to bring a piece or a color to the top when you don't care about what the sides are doing, or when it's the absolute center, so you don't care what the sides are doing. But once you have pieces in place, the corners, every cube has 4 corners, so we start off with every cube, and on a 2x2, of course, that's solved, and on every other cube, it has dictated what color each side should be. Now, we used to let the absolute center dictate what color each side was going to be and work around from the center out. But it's 2023. We don't need to do that anymore. That's how we did it back in the early 80s, and nothing has changed since then. In treating all cubes the same, they all have 4 corners, and those 4 corners can only be correct to each other in a specific way, which means that the corners if the corners are correct, which we have to do first, then everything else can be placed around the corners. Placing the edges next helps you to remember what column you're on when you work on the centers. So it's advantageous to do so for other reasons as well. So, but in Formula B is going to move 3 pieces around. Formula A brings a color to the top and may or may not mess up the edges, depending. Formula A brings a color to the top. Formula B moves 3 pieces around, and that's all you need to do, ever. ever. When we're looking at the layer, if a corner can only be in a corner piece, so all of the corners are on kind of the same layer. When you add the 3x3 into it, and when you bring a 3x3 into it, this one's not. My 3x3 has some parodies on it that I solved intentionally. So you can do it layer by layer. You can do it inside out. It doesn't matter. But whatever your last step is, can be treated as if it were the first step, because Formula A and Formula B is not going to mess up whatever else you have going on. When I was learning back in the 80s, you had to memorize algorithms and had to know which algorithm did which thing. This algorithm does moves these ones around, and this one moves these ones around, and this one, and then so you had to memorize. Yeah, I had to memorize first. You had to learn how to read the algorithms, what the cube definition was. Then you had to memorize those algorithms and know which algorithm does what. And then you had to also memorize which order to do, because if you did this and it messed up these things, you had to do those things after rather than first. And it was a lot. It was a lot, and it too. And so we learned algorithms, and the and the algorithms worked. It was kind of like in a game where you learn a cheat code, and that's okay, and the cheat code always works, and so you just start using that cheat code whenever you get into that position, but you're not actually understanding everything the game can show you. So in breaking this down in just using A and B, you are allowed to look at how the cube is actually moving, and so see how it works. And so you get to where you can solve the cube more intuitively, which happens with the algorithms as well. You start off with algorithms, and you start seeing where things go, and you get to where you can solve it more intuitively. And that's what this is. It takes me... Everyone always asks how fast I am on myself, because that's what everybody cares about. If you master the cube, the next thing to do is be a speed solver, and that's a fun thing to do. It's all because we as humans are programmed to always be improving. Without improvement, there's no fun. And so back in the 80s, some people went towards speed, and some people went towards pretty patterns. What pretty pattern can you make? Oh, look, I made stripes. Oh, look, I made a plus. Oh, look, I made a checkerboard. Oh, look, I made a stripe. See how many different things you can do, and then sharing those patterns with everyone else. Look, here's how you do stripes. Here's how you do diagonals. And that was fun, but I went in a different direction. Once I mastered the cube, once you can take it from a scrambled state and put it together again, you've mastered it. And then so instead of going, I didn't really care about speed. That wasn't what fueled my endorphins. But I'd be walking, I'd have the cube in my hand. It wasn't this one, it's a 3x3. I'd have a cube in my hand, and it'd be solved, and people would look at it like, what? The cube is solved. Well, now the same thing there is same thing now as then. If you could solve a cube, you were like, but a non-cuber looked at you like, wow, you must be a genius. You can, that's a skill that you have that I don't have, and you're amazing. And I would just say, how did you solve it? They'd say, how did you solve it? Did you take the stickers off? Did you move it? Because that's what done. That was done. Taking it apart and put it together again was done. Because, for one thing, if you want to see what an algorithm does, it's easier to see what it does from a solved cube. So, once you only have a couple of seconds, couple of turns to solve your cube from before it's scrambled and you can't get it back. So a way to see what your algorithms was doing was to take it apart, put it back together again, and then start. It's like, okay. And so you only had a couple seconds to try to figure out what your cube was actually doing before it was scrambled and you were lost. So taking it apart, putting it back together again, gave you another reset to be able to see how the cube works. This will solve any cube. And so if you are trying to learn a larger cube, or want to try a new method or new algorithms, you reset. This is a reset for the cube. So you can do their algorithms, look at it from a solved perspective, so you can see what each one does, mark it down, memorize it, etc. It takes me, so people say, how fast are you? And I'm like, okay, I didn't time myself. I mean, I did back in the 80s, I timed myself with, a friend with their stopwatch going, okay, go. Yeah, I'd say done, and they go, oh, okay, stop. But this is before the world record, first championship, first competition, first Rubik's Cube competition. And so I thought that I was just hot stuff, and I could. So when I got down to under 5 minutes, if I could solve it for under 5 minutes, then I could keep someone's attention while I was solving it. And they were like, "Oh, okay, something's happening. I can see that. Oh, those pieces are together. Oh, she messed up. No, oh, they're back." And people followed what I was doing, and the cube at the time was not as smooth and soft as these ones are. But I got down to 5 minutes. I got down to about 3 minutes. And I thought that was good until I watched the first world record, first competition. And I'm like, well, I am not going to dominate in that field. And so I just kept solving it, and it wasn't even my own solve. It was, I bought this book from the 7-Eleven down the corner. Because this is the one that was available at the 7-Eleven, and I memorized it as a teenager. That was easy to do. My mind was young and fresh, so I memorized it, and then by using so I could solve it. I could solve any cube. Yay! I can solve any 3x3 cube. It wasn't a 3x3 at the time. It was a Rubik's Cube because that was all they had, and so I'd just be walking with my cube because it was fun to twist and turn, and it's when you can solve it, it's interesting and fun and relaxing to twist it if you don't care what the cube looks like, because you can solve it, and so it doesn't matter what twists you do. You're not trying to memorize anything. You're not trying to learn. You're just trying to it's a fiddle cube. It's a fiddle toy, fidget toy. You can just twist it. And for my sister, that's all it will ever be, because she had no interest in it, and that's okay. So I'd be walking down the street, they're going, "Oh, how did you solve it? Did you take it apart, or did you rearrange the stickers?" And I said, "No, I just twisted it. I just solved it," which was amazing to everybody. And they're like, no, you didn't. And they would take it from me and twist it up again. She'll never figure this one out. I'm going to turn it one more time, and she's not going to be able to reverse my twists, because that's what that's what you'd have to do. You'd have to just reverse the twists, and then it's solved again. And so naturally, I was a teenager. I was in middle school, and so other people had cubes, and theirs was scrambled, and mine was not. And they're like, "Oh, can you teach me how to do that?" I'm like, "Yeah, I can." And so I'd say and so that it was I don't remember what the method was. But I said, okay, first do this, now put this one here, and this, and this puts this one here. Remember which side it's facing, and I just, walk people through, and they're like, "Oh, I did it!" And so immediately they would go show their friends, and their friends with cubes that were scrambled said, "Well, how did you do that?" And then they said, "Come over here." And so it's like, "Hey, can you teach me?" I'm like, "Sure, do this, and so I would get a circle around me, just a flock of cubes around me, and one person would put it in my face, and I'd say, "Okay, do this," and then while they were doing this, the next person said, "Here, what do I do?" And I'd tell them, and the next person, "Here, what do I do?" And the circle kept growing bigger and bigger, and the bullies stopped bullying me so they could get on the outside of the circle and be taught as well. So it was literally the way I survived my middle school and high school years, was I could do the cube. So more people wanted to learn from me than wanted to be uncomfortable with the fact that I was different. So I'd been teaching the cube since, off and on, as long as I've had a cube, and of course it's not nonstop for 40 years, but every time, people would see it and say, "Hey, can you teach me?" I'm like, "Absolutely." And still I'll see a large, when I'll be carrying a big cube like this one, it is scrambled, so it draws everyone's attention, and people will see it, and friends will see it and say, "Wow, can you really do that?" last time I was at church, when a little 10-ish-year-old boy came up to me and very, very, very polite, didn't want to be interrupting me, but he said, "Excuse me, but have you been able to solve that even just once?" Put it all together, even just once? And the thing is that if you can do it once, it's by accident. If you can do it more than once, then what can be done can be duplicated. What man can do, man can duplicate. So that was always fun. It was always fun to see people look at me and wonder, because I had a solved cube, and that elevated me in their eyes. Wow, you can cube. So instead I'd say, well, you know what? I can teach you how to do it. And he said, "Oh, but it's so big." And that's the thing, is that the larger cubes are more intimidating than the smaller cubes. One would think that this would be easier to solve than this. And if you're working with algorithms and cheat codes and you don't really understand the cube, you just know that if I do this, this happens, then yeah, this is easier than this one. Because this one requires more algorithms to memorize than this one, because there's more pieces. And so if each piece is handled differently, then the more pieces you have, the more things you have to learn. Well, here's the thing. This method does not handle each cube differently. Once you know Formula B, A and Formula B, that's all you use. You're not handling it differently. You just have to learn what B does. And what B does is it moves 3 pieces around. And so all you have to do is that, even though this is a larger cube than this one, the corners all act the same. The corners all act like a corner. There's not this corner is never going to do anything that this corner can't do. It's the other pieces that are not corners that you can look at and get distracted by and not know what to do. So Formula B, if applied to it applies to one column, one row, and one column. That's right. We're looking at the face of the cube as if it has rows and columns. I'm not ever going to move a middle slice like that. I'm not ever going to move the back. I'm not ever going to move anything that is not touching the front face. So all I'm ever going to do is the bottom row for A, the top row for B, and for A, the column that the piece that I want to move is in. So if it's an absolute center, then that would be, I would apply Formula A to this one. I'd use this row and this column. If I'm working with a corner, I apply this row and this column. And it moves this piece up. And of course this one down with it. And as I keep doing that, it twists. So Formula A is going to bring a corner to the top and twist it around until my yellow's on top. And then I'm going to, Formula B is all I need for the rest of the cube, because it moves 3 pieces around. If I look at the corners, if they're correct, then nothing needs to happen. But if they don't all match each other, either one of them will match, none of them will match, or all of them will match. And so if they don't all match each other, something has to be done. And then Formula B is going to move 3 of these around, and then bring A to the top so you can look at it more easily. You look and see if they match again. So the corners are done. Working with the second set of corners is no different than working with the first set of corners. Formula A and Formula B solves the 2x2. And so at that point in time, I say, okay, now Formula B is going to move 3 around. But if you only work with the outside columns, you're only working with the corners. But if you want to move, Formula B is top row horizontal in between each move, reverse of what the previous ones. So the horizontal is pretty easy to understand, and then there's 2 columns that you're moving. So if this is the piece that's incorrect, if I wanted to move this piece down here, I would use the top row, and then the 2 columns are where it wants to land and where it begins. So if I go away up in second column is where the cube is to begin with, the one we're applying it to. And then reverse, down, reverse, down. And you'll notice that only these 3 cubes, well, my centers are not done, but only 3 edges moved. And one of them was specifically the one that I wanted to, because it was wrong, and the other one that was the cube that was in the space where this one wanted to be, which means it was also wrong. So we're moving 3 pieces, and 2 of them we know were wrong. The third one takes care of itself, we don't care. But if I'm moving it to this side, that dictates the columns. If I want to move this edge piece to this side, again, the 2 columns are where it's going to end up and where it begins. So if I move this, if I do that, away, up, in, up, away, down, in, down, this piece indeed moved over here, and this piece indeed moved over there so that this one could come forward. But the thing is that it only moves the 3 that I'm trying to move. And so I don't have to remember which order to do which thing, because this method, this formula, does not mess up the other things. If the other things were scrambled, they remain scrambled. If they were solved, they remain solved. And so I don't have to worry about that. Oopsie. See how anyone, a couple new people. So once again, corners are 3 moves around by column B, by formula B, using the outside columns. It moves corners. Outside and inside column moves edges. You pick the edge you want to move, and the cube tells you what your columns are, so it doesn't matter, because top row, columns are where it wants to land, which is over here, and where it begins, which is here. So away from the action, up, in, back up, second up, and then down and down. So it's a commutator, mathematical 0, and so this one is placed. And again, if it's going in this direction, away, up, in, up, away, down, in, down, and I just ignore everything else about the cube. I only pay attention to the one piece that I want to place somewhere else. And so formula B can move corners, formula B can move edges. Well, if you know what, formula B can also move centers. Okay, I don't have to worry about lining it. Well, okay, the first move is I line it up to the top somewhere it's going to be. All right, so let's do this. Let's pick a cube. Here's a corner. Here's a piece. Here's a QB piece that is wrong. It is on the red side and it is a blue. So this is what piece is wrong. So let's place it. So we turn. My formula B is going to move this piece to the top. So I want to hold the cube so that blue is on top. Okay, so I want to move this piece up here. It doesn't really matter. You know, you can decide this is going to land right in this spot right here. So if I don't rotate the top, it's going to bring down this red. I can also have a choice of bringing down the blue, which is not really advantageous, bringing down the blue or bringing down the red. So I'm going to bring down, just pick one of the reds. So my first move, my horizontal move, is to line it up so this is advantageous. And then again, just the cube itself is going to dictate what the 2 columns are. I don't have to know which 2 columns to use to move this piece. I just have to let this piece tell me. So I move it up. I have to move the top row so that this lands in a different column. If right here, this is the same column, so that's not going to work, because that's just going to mess up my edges again. So again, I move it up. I move it a quarter turn so it's in a different column, and then this column is my second up. So there's my second up. And then I reverse what I did, and because I did my corners and edges first, they're there to give me a visual clue which column I'm working on, because when you have a large one, or you keep doing it over and over and over again, you can forget, you can miss it, your mind can skip. So set the top and do it again. Here is a green here's a green piece. So I hold it so the green's on top, so this piece can move up here. So formula B will do corners or edges or centers, and formula A will bring a chosen color to the top if you don't care what the sides are doing. So with that, there's really nothing more to learn. And so if I can teach someone this cube, then then I can also teach them this cube. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. So sorry. So if you can move 3 cubes around and you can let the cube tell you which the columns need to be, you don't have to memorize. If I move the second column in with the third column in from the other side, then that's going to do this thing. No, you just pick a cube. Let that cube dictate. Where's my sticky? Where's my sticky? There it is. Just pick a cube that's wrong, a cubey that's wrong. Sorry, the whole thing is a cube. Individual pieces is a cubey. Just pick a cubey that's wrong. Here's an orange one. It's going up here. So this is going to land. So the first thing is to line it up so that's advantageous. Right now, it's going to land into this spot. So we would be switching 2 oranges around, which isn't helpful. Another orange, there's a yellow. So we can switch these 2 around, and that'll be advantageous at least on one side. Maybe not both of them, but that's okay. So the one next to it also wants to come up, and the next one next to it can also be advantageous coming down. So we're going to treat these 2 as one piece instead of as 2 individual pieces, because we can. And we always use, well, you can, once you know what you're doing, once you're working on smoothing your operation rather than being clunky, you can start moving as larger pieces around as possible, so that if you don't, you might automatically put things into place without having to work for it. So this piece goes up. I rotate it so it's in a different column. Now if I go this way, it's not a different column, so I can't do it that way. I have to go this way, and you can only move, you have to be able to put it into a new column. So there's my second column, and then reverse. Well, these are my 2 columns, and reverse. Well, this is my column, and the end result of that is that my orange pieces moved up here. Here is a yellow. And that's it. You don't have to, look ahead's great, but you don't have to do that. You don't have to learn with this. This is why this is perfect for someone who hasn't taken the time to memorize the cube language and understand that a left is the parallel of a right. Left is a parallel of a right prime. Right prime. And these, you don't have to learn the language. You don't have to learn what each thing is. You just have to pick a cube that's incorrect, hold the cube so that it wants to go to the top, line it up with something that's fun to bring down. You usually have 4 choices. So yeah, so I'm going to put this up here. I'm going to bring the yellow down, and I'm going to demonstrate that these 2 pieces are not interchanging. It might look like they are, but they're not. There's always 3 pieces that are being moved, and you only care about one of them because the one you're going to place where it's going was obviously wrong because this cube wants to be there, and so the third piece, it'll work itself out. So I've lined it up, and I go up, move it to a separate column, second up, reverse down, and because I've done the edges, I don't have to remember what I'm doing, which columns I'm working with. Okay, so I'm sorry, I took that off before I could demonstrate. So this piece, the piece that was here, went up here. The piece that was here came down, but didn't land here, it landed here. So this piece moved over. So I moved 2 yellow pieces around. It looks like I moved 2 pieces around, 2 pieces around, but I moved 3. 2 of them looked the same, so you didn't notice. And so again, it always moves 3 pieces around, and there will always be at least 3 pieces to move. If there's more than that, you just pick a piece, throw it in its direction, pick a piece, throw it in its direction. And if for the centers, you're never going to have an unsolvable case, because since each piece is correct in one of 4 places, each center is correct in one of 4 places, due to the mathematics of the cubes, you can't ever have a unsolvable spot. So yellow, see, this is yellow, so I'm working with the green, which is important later on when you're taking the cube apart and putting it back together again to solve it, or to clean it, or to Hi, if you've just joined me, I'm Sunshine, and this is the ABCube method. I created it, and I love to talk about it. I love to dialogue more than I love to monologue, but I'm proud of myself, so I love to share what I've come up with. This is a new method for solving Rubik's Cubes. It's new as of 2020, and it does away, it eliminates the need for for cube language at all. I don't have to look at a situation and say, oh, this situation is called this kind of a permutation. I just have to pick a piece that's not correct. Put its color to the top so I can move it to the top. Line it up so something advantageous is going to come down, so it's going to land here. So this yellow is going to come down to this face somewhere, and this piece is going to go and land in that spot. So we're looking at the front of the cube as if it were columns and rows. We've got the top row that we're using, and we're going to use two columns. Now for the 2x2, it's pretty obvious what those 2 columns are. For a 3x3, it's more obvious. It's the center and an outside. But for a larger cube, you pick a cube that's wrong, aim it towards, go to the top, throw it in that direction. So that was my first up. I rotate the top so that lands in a separate column, and that's this column. So there's my second up. Reverse, down, reverse, down. And because I've done the edges before I do the centers, those edges line up to remind me where I am if I need that. But that's just it. Over and over again, you just pick a piece that's wrong, hold it so that it'll go, throw it to the top. So hold it so that that's going to be advantageous. So it's green, so I have green on top. It's going to land in a corner here. And so if I rotate the top so that's advantageous, now this cube is going to land right here. Well, if this cube goes up, if this cube displaces this one has to go somewhere, and it's going to land somewhere on the front. It's not going to land here, it's going to land over here, so that you can demonstrate that we always move 3 pieces around. Even when it looks like we're moving 2. It looks like we're exchanging a red corner for a green corner, but we're not. We're stick. Okay, we're going to put this cube here, and the cube that was in that place, let's see, so we go up, up, down, down, and the cube, so it was like this. So this cube went up here, and this cube came down, but it came down over here, meaning this cube went over in this direction. So it moved 3 cubes, but it only looked like it was moving 2. But we're always moving 3 cubes because there's always 3 pieces to move. If you have a parity, which looks like there's 2 pieces. Hello there, how are you doing? Hi, welcome back. I am doing well today. I made it, I survived another week. Still recovering. So, okay, well, recovering is better than not so much. Your body needs time to heal. Rest is so important. Rest and recovery is so important. We're taught in our society that if you're not doing something that's beneficial to someone else, then you're wasting your time. Well, if you don't have, you can't pour from an empty pitcher. If you don't take care of yourself, then you can't take care of anyone others, and you're not wasting time by existing. You are awesome and perfect just for existing, and worthy of care and love and care in general. So, still recovering. That's good. So here's a yellow. It's going to go up here. It's going to land in this spot, and because of the mechanics of the cube, I can move it with this yellow, or this yellow, or this yellow or this green. I'm going to leave the yellows where they are, and I'm going to put in this yellow up. I'm going to bring this green down. So first up, slide, second up, reverse down, reverse down. Someone said, this is boring. I'm like, well, that's because it's repetitive. It's it's boring because you're not talking to me. So talk to me and it won't be boring. But it is. It's very repetitive. Now, for a neurotypical mind, that becomes very easily boring because, okay, I've done that one. What's next? What's the next thing to learn? But for my flavor of neurotypical mind, that means that this, doing it over and over and over again, can either be boring or it can be relaxing because I can just turn my mind off. I don't have to think about it. Let's see, we've got some more dialogue. Had to help my grandmother go to the hospital today, and the tool to make her... Sorry. So you were doing heavy lifting to get your grandmother a tool. Yes, when you exhaust yourself, when you're in recovery, the recovery takes longer, but we do what we have to do to help those we love. I'm glad you were there I'm glad your grandmother was not alone. I'm glad you were there to help her. That warms my heart. Okay, so again, if there's a piece that's wrong, point it in the direction it needs to go. This piece is going to land in one of these four corners. So we'll end up with the one that wants to come down, which is the blue. And then again, you're looking at the cube, front of the cube, rows and columns. And all you need to know is the top row and 2 columns. And like I said, you don't have to know which columns you have to move. Yes, you will be fine. All you don't need to know which columns you have to move. You just have to let that cube piece right there dictate, because that's the piece that you're moving, and you're only moving 3 pieces. So this cube goes up. I move it to a different column, and that dictates what my second column is going to be. I didn't have to know that. The cube told me. Up, and then reverse. My edges line it up to tell me that I'm on the right space. And reverse. Set the top, and I have... The rest of the cube is safe and protected. The only cubes, I only moved 3 cubes. And two of them definitely wanted to be moved. All right. So, which also helps when you, like I said, I was started to say, when you're taking the cube apart and putting it back together again because you washed it or you're lubing it or whatever you're doing when you take the big cube apart. We take a little cube apart. We all know you have to put it back together again in the correct space, or it might be in an insolvable place because of the 43 big number, whatever zillion numbers there are. It doesn't matter. That's just a marketing number. Nobody cares how many ways there are to be wrong. And the marketing ploy then said, only this many possibilities and one solution. Well, that's true. For a 3x3, that's true. But while there's one solution, there's not only one method to get to that solution. This method is going to be so useful for cube arts. Like, oh yes, absolutely, like with pixel art with cubes. It's easier to do pixel art with a 3x3 because you know how to do the 3. But when the cube itself becomes its own art, then when I said that it didn't matter which way something goes, let's take this blue one. Okay, I rotate the cube so the blue's on top. Okay, I can either bring down this green or this orange or this white. It's yellow, and depending on what picture I want to make, I'll make that decision. But in doing so, in moving something to the top, because we are moving 3 pieces around and not 2, I can decide which of these 2 pieces I want to move into this square. For example, let me show it the other way, because two reds it's hard to tell. Here's a green. I'm going to move up into this blue spot, and I can decide whether I want this blue spot to land here, in which case this orange stays the same, or to land here, in which case this orange one goes up, or the orange one will go here. So either this blue is going to come here and this blue is going to come there, in which case the orange stays the same, or this cube is going to go here, and this cube is going to go here, and this orange will come up there. So let me move the orange one instead of the blue one so we can see. So I go up, move it into a different column. Do I want to move it into a different column so it lines up with, if I move it this way, it's a different column but it lines up with this piece. If I move it this way, it's a different column but it lines up with the orange. So second up, reverse down, and set the top. So that went where it wants to, and my orange moved. So I can use this if there's pieces that I want to move and my top is correct, for instance, solved, for instance, I can use that to move this piece. If I want to move this orange piece over here, this orange piece can be moved either here or here. If I want it moved under the red, I will move it up into a spot and move my piece down into that spot. And so now my white's there, but I want the white to be up again. I want my orange to come down. So I want my orange to come down here, so I'm going to put this piece up. When you start playing around with which pieces want to go where, you have to plan ahead as to what the cubes are going to do. Oh, sorry. Let me get this white up here again. I did that wrong because it's hard to theorize. So I put my yellow back up there, and indeed my orange is now here. So you can make pictures by moving just the cubes around that you want to do. Also, you have seen a cube brand. Also, you've seen that a cube brand has created a patent for a magnetic 29 by 29. Wow. More time for, yes, I remember, you know, once the 4x4 came out and then the 5x5 came out, the question is, well, how big can we do it? And that question was, well, when does it start falling apart when you turn it? You can make it, but it starts falling apart if you turn it. And so they had to come up with newer ways to do the middle with duplicating the core instead of trying to make it all out from the core. So the core duplicated and other things happened. Other amazing things. Because you see, when Mr. Erno Rubik created the 3x3, he was not creating a puzzle. I never spoke to the man myself, but he was not creating a puzzle. He was trying to create a model. Well, currently the biggest factory made is 21. Ha ha ha. You have a homemade 3D printed 3x3x3. How is its stability? Does it stay together? Oh man, that when you get bigger than my hands are small. When you get bigger than my hands, I have to use like my knee and my, you know, to help as a table, you know, to help stabilize which thing I'm. Oh. Well, currently, so you don't have it, but someone else has it. I will look it up online. I remember when 21 was the largest you could go. But where there's a will, there's a way. When you want to go bigger, you can find a way to do it. But like I said, Mr. Rubik was not creating a puzzle. The puzzle itself, in concept and theory, was already created as a 2x2 held together with magnets. It had 6 colors on 6 sides, and you could twist it like so to try to get the sides to match up. And if you couldn't get it to match up, then you just pull the magnets apart and put it back together again in the start position, and then try again. So that puzzle itself, in the concept, already existed in the 1970s. Nichols was the guy who patented it. But Erno came along in 74, Mr. Rubik came along in 74, and he wanted a way to hold the pieces together, because the story goes that he was trying to demonstrate how an atom can rotate around, how the pieces of the atom can rotate around and still maintain stability. And so he needed to be able to have a cube that rendered in 3 directions. And he did pay to patent it. Wait, he had to pay the patent? Because what he created was the method for holding the cube together. He didn't create the puzzle. He just created the way of holding it together. And so once we knew that cubes could turn in 3 different directions, then it was easy to find ways to break that patent. Did he win when he sued? Because I know that those who hold, those related to him now think that they act like they hold the patent on everything that looks like a Rubik's Cube, because we call it Rubik's Cube. Same way we call interlocking loops Velcro. Same way we call bleached Clorox. He had to pay to make his... Oh! I got it, sorry. Okay. Because the Nichols is, I did not know that part of history. Thank you for enlightening me. So because Nichols had a toy that was just a 2x2 that you could twist, and Rubik's came along with, well, but my 2x2 doesn't fall apart, and it's like, okay, but it's still a 2x2 cube puzzle that twists. So I can see why that would be so familiar. If it were going the other direction, because Rubik's invented the way of holding it together, they can say, well, my cube looks like... Rubik's could sue and say, well, yours looks like mine, and they can say, well, mine comes apart and yours doesn't, so it's different. I did not know that part, but I did know that when people started duplicating this, he did sue and said, that's my toy, and they said, we did it differently. The 3x3 was bigger than the end. Oh, the 3x3 and bigger end by ends were fine. Okay, so, but he was just trying to demonstrate to his students that it's possible that this is how an atom works. This is how molecules work. And then the story is that it was just a wooden cube, and he would twist it, and sure enough, it twists in all directions. I did it. And he said, now I want to watch what it's doing, I want to see how it works. And so he painted each color a different color, and started watching how the movements were made, what did it, and he played with it for about an hour and said, okay, I'm going to put it away. And so he tried to put the colors back where they were, and he couldn't, because he may have understood the physical state of the molecules, but he did not understand the toy that the puzzle, as a puzzle that he had made. It did not become, it was a model that he'd made. It did not become a puzzle until he tried to solve it and couldn't. That's what made it the puzzle. If there's a tree in the forest and it falls and no one's there to hear it, blah, blah, blah. It wasn't a puzzle till he tried to solve it and couldn't. Then it became a puzzle. And it was originally called Magic Cube, because it magically held itself together, but that name did not last because they wanted to sell it as a toy. They didn't want people saying, oh, don't buy the Magic Cube, it's tied to the occult. And so they changed it to Rubik's Cube because that was his name. They didn't have another name for it, and everyone loved it. When the 4x4 came out, it could have been called anything, but Rubik's Cubes were crazy popular at the time. Hello, I'm not going to try to pronounce your name, and thank you for following me. I really appreciate that. I've made it past 50 followers now. I'm big time. So the 4x4 came out. It was invented. It was not invented by Rubik. I did not know this at the time because this was called the Rubik's Revenge. And the story that I told myself in my mind was that Mr. Rubik got so mad at people breaking his patent, so he's like, fine, I'll one-up you and do this one instead. But no, this was someone else, and they could have named it anything, but they called it Rubik's Revenge because they bought into the standardization of the name. If this is a Rubik's, and I can't call it a Rubik's Cube, but I can call it a Rubik's Revenge, and I think he probably sued for his name, but he's not the only one that has that name, and I don't know. But the Rubik's Revenge, so this became the Rubik's Revenge, and because of that decision, now we call every cube a Rubik's Cube. We could have kind of come up with a different name for it, and Rubik's Cube could just be a subset of that, of twisty cubes. But we call them all Rubik's Cubes, which I'm sure annoys Mr. Rubik no end, but I don't know. I've never met the guy. So that's it. Every single cube, every n by n by n cube, big or little, can be solved with these two formulas right here, Formula A and Formula B. And Formula A brings a piece to the top without caring about the rest of it, and Formula B moves 3 pieces around and does not mess up anything else. And Formula B moves 3 pieces around. There's always 3 pieces to move around. A parity is a lie. There are no parities. Parities don't exist. A parity is a visual confusion. To ask me about parities. I love to talk about parities. So how are you today, my newest friend? Yes. Oh, you saw the first one? I haven't seen pictures of the first one. I haven't seen pictures of the first one. But I would love to get one of the original Nichols originals that are just held together by magnets, because that would be so much fun for me. That would be so much fun for me if I could have a cube. And I saw one online. This is before magnetic cubes became a thing. Someone had handmade one, and he was giving away the instructions on how to make it. But he had taken 27 clear pieces of plastic, clear pieces of acrylic, and 27 pieces, and he had mapped out, okay, if this is a negative, and then when it lines up with a positive, it's going to match. So the inside, and he figured out how to mathematically make the 27 pieces hold together as a cube, and it was twistable like a Rubik's Cube. And so he had made this out of acrylic, and it was held together by magnets, and so you could take it apart and put it back together again. And I'm like, ooh, I want that. When I have the money, when I have have the money and physical expertise of how to drill holes in acrylic, then I'm gonna create one of those on my own. In the meantime, I'm gonna come, maybe there'll be a thing and I can buy one. So a couple of years later, I'm like, I really want that now, and I wonder if anyone's made anything with it. So I searched for magnetic Rubik cube, and I could not find it anywhere. I'm sure it's out there, but it has different search terms. But what I did find is Rubik's cubes had magnets put in them so that they will snap. Not snap, but they will pause when they're so like this cube, this mirror cube. I'm sure it's magnetic, because when I turn it a quarter turn, it snaps at a quarter turn, making it much easier to solve than other mirror cubes that do not, because lining up is the hardest thing for turning. And nowadays, corners you can quarter turn something. The original cubes, you could, if it had to be exactly lined up, or you could not move the cube. So part of it had to, you couldn't have it mostly there, and it would know what you wanted to do, and it would do it. But this one's not doing it. I don't know what all my cubes are, is my problem. So A and B solves every n by n cube, and took me 10 years to come up with this method. The first 5 years were dedicated to getting it all. I'd say, here's a cube, here's my method. Tell me where it's confusing, and then say, okay, what did you mean here? I kind of got it, so I'd come back and I'd rewrite it and answer that question and make it more clear, and then I'd say, go to someone else. Here's my cube. Here's a cube. Here's my method. Tell me where it doesn't make sense, and I would rewrite. So that 5 years of that, and I got it, and I had it in printed book form from the library. Here, pay 10 cents a page and get it printed out of the library. But when I tried to find an agent, and they're like, well, who are you? That we see that there's hundreds of Rubik's Cube books out there, and hundreds, thousands of Rubik's Cube websites, so why would we, what is your area of expertise that makes this different that we would want to manage you? And I said, but, so I rewrote the book, rewrote the presentation of the method. The method stayed the same, still A, still B, still corners, etc. But when I started teaching people, when I was teaching people in real life, I would teach them the 2x2, or I would teach them the 3x3. And then I'd say, okay, now we go to the 4x4, and they're like, no, you know what, my brain's tired now. I only really wanted to learn the 3x3. I'm sure that's much more complicated, and I just don't want to learn anything new right now. I'm like, but so instead, I had to. There's this mental wall that I could not teach people the big cubes, which was what was fun. Couldn't teach people the big cubes. So I made a change. And when someone came to me, when I would have a cube, and they say, hey, can you teach me? I'd say, absolutely, here. And I would give them any cube, and I'd say, okay, and teach them how to do the corners. A and B. A brings the color to the top, B moves it around, A brings the color back to the top again. They match. Wonderful. Turn it upside down, do it again. Bah, corners are done. And then they'd say, okay, now let's do what's next. And instead of teaching them going to the edges, I'd say, well, next, let's do it on this one. Just same thing, just the corners, ignore everything with the corners, just do it again. And then I'm like, okay, great, now do it on this one. And they would do just the corners. And so they realized in that first hour that they can do no matter what the cube looks like, they know how to do the corners. And so then I took like 2-3 minutes and said, by the way, if you apply formula B to an outside and inside instead of the outside two outsides, it moves edges around. So give that a try. And handed them a cube to play with. They came back the next week and said, and they said, okay, well, what do I do? And because they would take, once they had A and B solidly in their heads, then I said, okay, now B does this and this and this as well. Just let the cube tell you if you want to, which piece you want to move, and make that happen. This cube has 2 parities on it. This piece wants to be here, this piece wants to be here, but it has another parity over here where this piece wants to be here and this piece wants to be here. Parities are lies. A parity, there's always 3 pieces. In this cube, there's 4 pieces out of place, so I don't have to worry about fixing a parity. I just have to break these apart and place them where they want to be. See, when I treat these as one piece, which my brain wants to do because I paired them up and I treated it like a 3x3, the fact that they're similar, the fact that they look like they fit to each other makes me not want to break them up for my cube. But the thing is that they are correct to each other, and we can either redo the rest of the cube to match them, or we can know that the rest of the cube is stable to itself, and these are the ones that are unstable to the cube. So let's move these around instead of making the whole cube match these two. Let's make these two match the whole cube, and that means I have to break it apart and not let it be a single piece in my head. And to do that, and when I do that, when they come back together again, I just place each piece correctly, and they'll pair themselves up. So if it looks like there are 2 pieces out of place, where's my, here. Oh, I had a parity prepared so that I could just solve it. All right. If it looks like there are 2 pieces out of place, they're not. This one has 4 pieces. This one has the corners. Having a corner edge, having a corner parity, meant that on an odd number cube, it also had to have edge parity as well. The edge parity is the absolute edge rather than the side edges. So I'm just going to pretend these corners are correct, and I'm just going to use this as a parity to demonstrate. So you would not get this on a cube if the corners were correct. It might look like this piece and this piece wanted to switch, because this piece could correctly be in here, this spot as well. But because the corners are incorrect, I get an incorrect parity. That happened on the Rubik's Cube when I was learning. I would do the corners and then start lining up the edges, and I get to where, wait a minute, it says there's only 3 ways this can look, and this looks like this one instead. I'm going, oh, well, what happened? And they're going, well, what happened was your corner was in the wrong place. Your center was in the wrong place. So I moved the center into the right place, and sure enough, then there only became so many possible solutions. And however many possible solutions are, we've learned to memorize that and label them, and this is the shortest way for that particular situation. And yes, we can get very fast with that, very efficient with that. This is neither fast nor efficient in solving, but it is incredibly fast and efficient in learning. So here's a parity. So if this piece wants to be here and this piece wants to be here, it certainly looks like there are only 2 edges out of place, and they want to be there. I told you there was always 3 pieces out of place, and so if you don't see the third piece is the one you don't see. So it's the layer itself that is incorrect to the internal workings of the machine. So if I make a quarter turn of the layer that has the parity on it, then I will have, it doesn't matter which direction, I'm going to have 1 cube that's correct, and 1 edge piece that's correct, and 3 edge pieces that are incorrect to the new cube, to the new situation of the cube. And so I can solve the cube, I can then solve the cube, and that will disappear. But when I do, it's going to, the centers, because I did the centers first before I fixed the parity, those centers, my mind's going to want to just put that center back, which preserves the parity. So this is why I always do my centers last, so that if there's a parity, I can resolve it as it comes up and not have to memorize a long, convoluted algorithm to undo the parity later on. It's like I said, it may be faster and more efficient to do it the shortest number of moves, but the more efficient you are, the more complex, the more things you have to memorize. So A and B solves every cube. So thank you for spending your morning with me. I've had fun. Thank you for, like I said, again, thank you for the new follow, and thank you. I hope that your grandmother does well, and that you recover well. You recover nicely as well. The rest of you, go have a wonderful day or evening, and good night or evening, depending on where you are in the world. I don't know where you are. And in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. So you guys go have a great day, and I'm going to go feed my face and my cat, and I will be back here. Oh, it's Friday. Yes, I will be back here this evening to play more, and I'll also be back here tomorrow morning. My schedule currently is that I do every weekday morning just a little tidbit, and then my times to play and actually teach are more Friday evenings and Saturday mornings. So I will be back here this evening. Same bad time, same bad station. You guys, thank you again, and I will see you guys this evening. If you're here, hope you come. Bye.